Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share all the things. I'm sure you'll want to share today. I think today is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm excited to go into things with our guest, Dustin. Dustin was in plumbing just 3 years ago. Now he runs a seven-figure financial company. So that's a big change, similar to a lot of people I know, which I really find exciting. Family guy surrounded by women. So that's pretty cool too. Welcome to the show, Dustin.
Glad you had me on.
Awesome. Well, let's get into things. So you were a plumber for how long? What got you into that? And then what got you out of that and into financial services?
Yeah, this might get boring, but I was in construction and oil field work my whole life. I'm in Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, so that's about all there is just getting outside, getting dirty, working with your hands. If you want to make more money, you just have to work more hours. So I got into plumbing because my grandfather-in-law owned a plumbing business back in 2011. I did that for about a year and decided it wasn't for me. Well, I came back around about 2016. I had just gotten my BBA from college, and I was like, the average pay for BBA is $35,000 a year. I don't want to do this. I can go plumb and make $48,000 a year. So that's what I did. I did that for about 3 years. And to be honest, this is going to get real nerdy. I used to play my Xbox all the time. Like I'd come home and unplug from the world, turn on my game and play. Well, I played with this person, and this person was always negative, 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 negative. Like my five kids are always driving me crazy. My husband doesn't listen. And one day I was like, I am so tired of hearing all this negativity. And I'm thinking, I'm probably doing this to people too. I'm probably complaining at work about how I have to be up early and don't make enough money. So I snapped. I turned off my system. I shoved it in a drawer. And I thought, what can I do to change my life? Because I know I'm good at what I do. Everywhere I go, I'm normally like in 2 weeks, I know the whole business. I'm sitting there restructuring my day to day. Like, how can this company make more money? How can I restructure this to make it better? And so I got on TikTok of all places. Oh my, I landed in financial services because of TikTok, and I'm like top 10 highest paying jobs without a degree. Now I had a degree, just a bad degree. And financial services just kept coming on top. This lady would say, I made $100,000 last month selling life insurance. Okay, that's cool. I don't really care about the money, but I'd rather make more than $50,000 a year. And for context, when I was plumbing, I made $18,000 a year. That's how much I made. $324 a week. And I have $324 tacked on the wall just to remind me. Um, yeah, and I just thought, okay, how can I do this? How do I get into this? One of my friends, he's been walking outside for weeks. He had this poncho on and this like monsoons coming through. I'm like, what is this guy doing? So I went back and watched his stories and it was 75 hard. I was like, okay, what is this 75 hard thing? And playing football my whole life, I played football for 14 years. I really like the competitiveness. I like sweating. I like to just do things that make me uncomfortable. So when I saw 75 hard, I was like, 75 days is tough. Like one day is fine or a couple hours is fine. I love sporting events, but let's see what we can do. So day 175 hard, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this life insurance thing. Went and took my life insurance exam about 11 days into 75 hard, passed it, got licensed. My first year and a half, I made negative, I think it was $8,000. And I was like, I
Crushing.
don't, yeah, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I told my wife, I was like, hey, I took two SBA loans out, two small business loans out to get through this to make sure this works. But I'm down to about 2 grand. So whenever I run out of money, I will go back to the oil field. I will never look back. I'll say I tried, but it's just not for me. I kid you not, I was down to $324 the night before I put my application in at my old job again. And I woke up and I had like 750 messages on my Instagram. So to kind of go back, I started to, while I was learning life insurance, I would post online, social media. Hey, did you know this does this? Hey, did you know this does this? And I did that every single day, 3 posts a day for like 9.5 months. No return, no likes, no comments, just kept doing it. Well, I woke up one day, the algorithm favored me. 750 messages later, I went from negative $8,000 to like $10,000 a month. And I thought, this is going to work. All right. And it honestly came down to $324. And the next thing you know, I'm up and going. And now, a year after that, well, 14 months after that moment, we're doing like $250,000 a month right now of not revenue, but actual profit in hand. So if that answers your question, I was outdoors, plumbing, got sick of life, got sick. And I'll tell you this too, Ed Milet. Ed Milet said something on a reel that really jarred me, and I think that's what made me so agitated that day. He said, Daddy, I want to be something whenever I grow up. He said, You can be anything you want to. And he looks up at his dad and says, Well, why didn't you do what you wanted to do? And I was like, Whoa, your kids, like they see everything you do. They know when you're lying. They know whenever you're just trying to fluff them up. And I thought, what am I doing for my kids? Like I always brag about how strong I am and how hard I work and how, I'm always use integrity of everything I do, but I'm not doing anything in my life. So that flipped the switch for me.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, and I think anyone that's listening, like, yeah, you were doing 3 posts a day for 9.5 months. First of all, that's consistency. You were also doing 75 hard, which is all consistency. And you were just inches from like quitting. And I think the universe, well, I believe in God. So I think God like looks at that and is like, okay, let's see if you'll actually quit. And then when you don't and you went all the way to that point, and I mean, I like that you had a dead end though a little bit. That was like a really tough dead end because you did have a family. So I think sometimes, and I don't know what your thoughts are, sometimes I think like where's the limit between like pushing all the way? Because sometimes I do think, and this is just I'm just talking aloud and my mind's going through this. I think sometimes people like push too far and then they run their family into financial ruin. And then there's also, which I think majority is people quit too soon. So like how do you like looking back at that, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel that kind of, I don't know, I mean, obviously it panned out for you, but how do you feel about that for other people?
I feel like it takes a mental illness to do what I did. I don't know if I'm mentally ill. I don't think anyone knows if they're mentally ill. But consistency is tough. I mean, I have people that I teach hundreds of people a month how to do what I did, and maybe one a year will actually stick to it and do what I tell them to do. So it's just, I think Alex Hormozy talks about it. When the pain of change outweighs the pain of staying the same, that's whenever you do something. And I was to the point where I was like, hey, I have $1,200 in my bank account. To me, that's rich. My mortgage is paid, my bills are caught up. We're going on a vacation once a year. Like I'm comfortable. But then whenever I felt that negativity and I was like, I had a pain point, something to refer to that told me that, hey, if I want to get away from that pain point, if I want to stop hearing people complain, if I want to change my inner circle, which at the time I was probably friends with two people. I kind of completely erased my circle about 5 years ago. So I had no friends to hang out with, no
It
one to
wasn't a
talk
circle,
to.
it was like a line.
Yeah, it was a line, and then they didn't live near me. So everybody I was around was at work. And then if you go to like the plumbing parts store, everyone hates their life. They're depressed, they're sad, they complain, they're talking about the news. Coffee went up 50 cents today. It's just like all complaints. So I was like, I had to have that pivot point of like, hey, I realized where I'm at. I realized it's my fault. That's another thing Alex Hormozy says. If you want to grow, you finally have to look in the mirror and say, it's my fault. Like you can say that, hey, my dad raped me when I was a kid. You can say that, I got in a car wreck and I'm missing a leg. You can say all these excuses, but until you just say, hey, what am I working with? Whenever I think it's Nick Vujicic, the guy with no arms and no legs. Whenever I met that guy at a conference in Oklahoma City, that is the most confident and beautiful human being that I've ever been around. And I couldn't believe it. He's like, come here and give me a hug. And I was like, I gave him a hug and I just broke down like a big old baby. I bawled. I was like, man, this guy that has nothing, that was like thrown in a gutter, that was basically told that he was not worth the air he was breathing, is the nicest person in the world. So I need to change who I am. That's just strictly that's it.
Perspective.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So if someone like, is going into this and like they're wanting to revamp their life, you said you coach lots of people. What are some of the things you tell people to do that they don't do? But let's say one person's listening right now, maybe they'll actually do some of the things you say. What are some things that you think help for the success?
Well, one thing that 75 Hard did teach you, and I'm in a couple coaching groups where two of the coaches are like, you don't need 75 Hard. 75 Hard just teaches you non-negotiables, and that it does. Once you finish 75 Hard, once you do it for, and Andy would get on to me for saying this, half of 75 Hard, you kind of understand what it is. But until you finish it, it's not locked in. I say
Correct.
all this to say that non-negotiables, like if you can wake up and say, I'm not going to do this, because I always do this. I'm not going to touch my phone. I'm not going to stop at the gas station and get a donut and coffee today with extra cream and sugar. Like I'm not going to scroll on my phone for 2 hours tonight. you think that you're busy. And if you write it down on paper, you're like, okay, I have 3 hours a day to piddle, but I enjoy my TV. I enjoy my phone. But whenever you actually take 75 days, you take a step back and say, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to touch that. 75 days out of my entire life, hundreds of thousands of days, or I don't know, well, yeah,
Whatever there is. Lots of
whatever the
days.
days are, all these days, 36,000 days of your life, I'm going to take 75 days and actually do what I'm supposed to do. And then I can look up and say, hey, I tried. It just didn't work. That's what I told myself. Give myself 2.5 months, eat clean, work out all the time, completely disconnect. Disconnect is the key. Like disconnect from what everyone else is doing. Because if you do what everyone else is doing, you're going to get what everyone else is getting. And, that's one thing that really I struggled with growing up extremely poor. Like to this day, my parents have never made more than $25,000 a year as a household. um, just growing up in a poor mindset, you always think rich people or even wealthy, I say wealthy, like 100,000 earner, you think they're evil, like they did something wrong. They're just nasty people.
Mhm.
You start to realize those people just self-develop. They're like, hey, don't want to be like everyone else. I don't want to stay stagnant, just a green puddle in the street. I want to grow and I want my mind to open. And then once you read your first self-development book, if you are open at all, if you have any kind of mindset, you want to grow your mindset, you're going to look in the mirror and say, wow, it's not as bad as I thought it was. People are just saying, I'm tired of looking in the mirror and seeing the same thing every day, whether it's your body, whether it's the house you live in, whether you're tired of driving that tattered up car, if you're tired of not taking your family on vacations. Like I took my first vacation at 29 years old and someone paid for it. And then I took my first vacation that I paid for at 32 years old. So I went, I mean, I've been married for 10 years. We were dating for three. We went 9 years without a vacation. Our vacation was a movie. We'd had $100. We'll go spend 40 on a movie, no popcorn, and that was our idea of life. So we just looked up and said, hey, we need something different, and that's what you have to do. You have to look in the mirror and say, what do I have? What do I want? And work backwards. I tell people that with finances all the time. If you're 40 years old and at 65 you want $100,000 a year of income, okay, we have a number to work with. Work backwards. How do you get to that point? It's the same thing with self-development.
And what do you think? Because I think people do that, like that are in a lot of people I know or people that listen to this, they're already in the personal development space. I would say most of this is their first podcast. Welcome. But most people they've listened to, and they know this stuff. So what do you think the difference is? Like even because I'm in financial services too. So he's like, yeah, you want this saved, but then they're like, oh, but then they don't really actually save it. So what's the difference between like this is what I want, but like that pain point, and how can someone I don't know. This is something I really analyze. How can someone force themselves, I don't know, to really get connected to actually do that work? It's easy to say all those things. Lots of people say it, or they come out of a podcast, or they come out of an event and they're fired up and my life's going to change. And then, 2 weeks, 1 week, one day later, it's all the same. What is the difference maker, you think? And how could someone maybe put themselves into that feeling so that they could continue to make the shift?
Two things I always say to this, and most people they look at me and go, "Oh, yeah, that's not enough." One, Jordan Peterson always says, "If you want to know what's wrong with your life and how to fix it, sit on the foot of your bed, turn the lights off, and just think." And if you sit there and you think long enough, you're going to realize what is wrong. Most people, they know all the answers to all their problems. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't do it. Like I know
Exactly.
if I want to lose weight, it's drink a gallon of water, eat less, but eat more meals. Like I know what to do. Everyone has the right answers for themselves. And honestly, most people give the best answers to other people because they know their own problems, but they won't fix their own problems.
Right.
That's one. Two is burn the ships. Like some people say, don't burn the ships, leave yourself options. I love Andy Frisella when he says that. Like, if you want to go all in, make sure that there's no other path. Corner yourself like a rat. And if you can't claw out of that, then honestly, you probably should be working at a dead end 9 to 5 job where your business should plateau because when I keep pulling up Alex Ramosi and all these people, what got you here won't get you there. Like, to me, what got me here was consistency on social media, answering every single DM personally. Like if you message me, I pull out my camera and I send you a message. Like it's me. It's not a robot. It's not a personal assistant. That's what got me here. But what's going to get me to the next level is automation, talking to people, going out and networking. I haven't done that. And in 2.5 years, I've built what I've built just from communication, one-on-one, organic social media posts. So I feel like I've kind of danced around your question, but you really just have to look in the mirror and say, because like you said, you're in personal development, you know what to do, you've read the books, you understand it, but you haven't had the pain point yet. The biggest thing you do with mentors, and you probably know this, mentors is like they pay your what do they call it, your ignorance debt, something you don't know, they're going to pay for it, you're paying them to tell you what not to do. Now if you don't want a mentor and you don't want to pay for it, you honestly just have to say, hey, I don't want to do any of this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you can pull out a list and you can check that list off, like the power list, if you can take a power list of 5, 10 things to do a day and you do them every single day consistently 7 days a week, instead of avoiding your life on the weekend, every day's a weekend. Like for me, every day I feel like I don't work. My wife went with me on a business trip, and it was a business trip, and she was like, I didn't like it, but I feel like you don't work. And I was like, exactly. Like all I do is I show up and I conversate with people and something moves forward, and it's the best life ever. She even said, I went to school. She went to school for 8 years total, to get a 4-year degree as a nurse. And she looked at me after our last event and she goes, I'm not really fulfilled. Maybe I want to do what you're doing. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, there you go. That'll start to 10x your business. Bring your wife in. That's amazing. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So, as you went into, you did 75 hard. I'm curious, as you went through it and your wife was there and you had kids at this point, obviously, how, and this is just honest, I guess you can say however you want. How supportive was she of the switch? And like, and she's got every right not to be, by the way, because you've got kids, you've got family, you're like killing all your money. Um, and if she wasn't that supportive, how did you handle that and how did you work through it?
So for 75 hard, working out all the time, eating the right food, she was kind of jealous. She didn't like that I was changing my life. I'd get a little less soft. I was a little darker because I was walking every day. So like I was making positive changes and she was kind of jealous of it. That was the 75 hard thing. So that actually drove her to, she's lost 40 pounds in the last year. She's never had abs before. She has abs now. So she just had to look and say, and we talk about this all the time, consistency. Like she said, oh, I only eat one time a day and I work 12 hours a day and I'm always on my feet. I don't know why I'm not losing weight. I said, 2 tacos from Taco Bell. Like, yeah, it's only 700 calories. You need 1500, blah, blah, blah. We had that talk. So she finally saw consistency and that's what she did and it worked for her. Now, as far as like the entrepreneur path, she hated it. She is a 9 to 5
Yeah,
paycheck on
nurse.
Friday type of person. Yes. And she's just like, bills are due. Where's the money? I don't know. Here, I have a loan. Go pull from that account, pay the bill. How do you live like this? I've never done it before. So honestly, I don't know. I'm just having faith that it's going to work out. Um, I always felt like growing up, and everybody says this, you always feel like you have potential and that you need to live up to it, but you just don't know how to live up to it. Like there's some value you can provide, you just don't know what it is. And growing up, I always over-explained everything, overanalyzed, over-explained. I wanted people to be professionals day one with what I knew. So if it was football, I would overteach them and then they would just drop off. And I think that skill or that issue, some people would say that it's, not a good oh, what do you call that? Anyways, I in finances, I overanalyze, I overteach, and 90% of the people love it. They're like, I would have never even known to ask that question. I appreciate you for answering it for me. Um, but no, she didn't like it. But now that we have the money, she'll randomly see my bank account when I'm checking it. And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." And at first, she's like, "Oh, yeah, I know all these things I want. Like, I want an S class. I want a 2018 S class. I want to upgrade the or get a hot tub or upgrade the house." And I'm like, "I'm an entrepreneur. That money is rainy day funds. If I put that money back into my business, I'll make 5x." She's like, "Well, go do it." And I'm like, hey, stick to your 9 to 5 nursing. I'll stick to the thing that made me money, and yeah, we'll be successful.
So, so she was not very supportive, which, like I said, I don't blame that. Kids, sometimes you need that steady, thing. But a lot of people use that as an excuse. How were you able to, I mean, like, how did you able to keep your relationship together even? And it sounds like it's even stronger because like she is thinking about maybe even joining you, which is pretty massive if she's a very much an employee mentality. So you're showing her something, which is pretty cool. How did you manage to keep the relationship together? Because I see a lot that, they're just like, my wife is not supportive or my husband is not supportive. And that becomes the excuse in my mind of the thing. But I'm not married, so I'm like, I can't speak on it. So I love you to speak on it, how you went through that, even when you didn't have a quote supportive spouse to hold the marriage, hold the family, and go after your passion and your calling.
Yep. I actually had a logical conversation with her, and she's not logically brained, so it was kind of like it didn't work out too well. I just said, hey, over our lifetime, we're going to buy like five more cars, two more houses. We're going to load up on 10 credit cards over our whole lifetime. We're going to waste money. So what if I took $20,000 of debt and I put it into myself and the business works out? Let's say we make $100,000 a year. That's double what we're making now. And all I had to do was take $20,000 of debt in a year of my life to do it. Oh, but how are we going to pay bills? So she gave me all the pushback. Like people that say
Mhm.
their spouse isn't supportive,
Yeah.
but then again, we're also a godly household. So um, I kind of looked at biblical principles and said, people that are stagnant in life, that aren't moving forward, they're depressed. And then we had to, honestly, the tipping point for us was that we're family people, and her family became very negative, became very degrading. Their lives were slowly falling apart, and she noticed it was all their fault. And she was just like, I don't want to be in that boat. And I said, okay, well, that's what I'm working toward. So then, whenever we started making money, when we started to go on trips and be around people that were happier. Like we went on a trip that I had a couple business partners, and she was like really good friends with one of the wives. And she thought, man, people are this happy, people are this outgoing, like this exists. So that was the turning point. Because who says this? I think it's Andy Elliott says that the reason why your spouse hates your job is because you complain about it all the time. Oh, I went to work today and so said this, and I lost a deal. So all they have is negative to tie to your. I actually had to have this conversation with my wife the other day. She said, "Oh, this doctor did this and this nurse did this," and I said, "Hey, remember that meeting we went to with Andy Elliott and his wife, where his wife said, 'Don't talk negatively about your work.'" Yeah, okay, you're doing that right now. She goes, "Oh, okay." Um, and honestly, just being around other couples that are doing things is going to help your spouse. Now, I know there's some people that they're just negative and you will never get them out of their negative. Like a lot of my family are like that. That's why we see none of our family anymore besides my parents. But you just have to have the honest conversation. And honestly, if you have to divorce, like maybe that's it. And if you have kids, you really need to think about that. But if you married someone and they're not on the same mindset as you, like I get opposites attract, but you got to rethink your life. Well, what does the next 40 years of your life look like not doing what you want to do? And then possibly just being single and going out and doing what you want to do in life.
That well, what I got at that is go make money if you're an entrepreneur. The reason they don't believe in you is because they haven't seen you do it. So if you need to, you need to go make it happen. So I think on the other side, a lot of entrepreneurs are like, I'm just an entrepreneur and I'm not making any money. And then it's like years later, I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm like, well, you better make some money at some point. So yeah, so make it work. And I liked how you had like an end goal, like, hey, when this runs out, we'll quit. And it wasn't forever and ever and ever. And like, so I think those were two really key points there, which is pretty cool. So what do you see in the next 5 years? What's kind of your goal for your company and for your business and where you're going?
I'm only doing annual goals now. So I had a 5-year goal, and then I got in the Andy Elliott group. And he told me to have unreasonable expectations. So I made this little dog tag, and on the back of it, it pretty much says what I want this year, which is like I want to make $1 million a month by the end of the year. I want to speak on a stage at least once, if not once a month by the end of the year. I want to have a better relationship with my wife, which, whatever, you can't really measure that, but she can tell you if it's better. So
Yep.
have a yeah, have a better relationship with God and go to my kids' events. Because before I couldn't go to my kids' events because I was working. Now that I have all the time in the world, but I have to look back and say, hey, you have the time, but you also have to work. Entrepreneurs, you have all the freedom or no money, or you have all the money and no freedom. Um, so my goals, end of year, $1 million a month. That's my main financial goal. If I had to pick a 5-year goal, we're up to about $200 a year or $200 million a year in revenue. And honestly, in the financial services industry, that's doable. I believe it's a $3 trillion industry. So if you can own 1% of that market cap, that's a lot of money.
That's awesome. And you know, what does your day look like? Like what is going to take you in your mind from where you're at to that level? What's a difference maker?
So what I do now is still social media marketing. That's like I used to be the producer, the janitor. I answered the phones. I did the underwriting. I did everything. Now that I moved into the role, I partnered with a couple high-end business, the guys that do my high net worth clients. Um, Hired 35 advisors, three CPAs, tax attorney. So I brought everyone in to do my job. Now it's just social media marketing. So every day I wake up, check all my notifications, answer each message promptly, try to make sure I get to people real early. That way they're like, hey, this guy's up and going. What I need to do is I need to do automation. Need to meet more people. I need to get in bigger rooms because bigger rooms, bigger leads, bigger premiums, bigger everything. So, and that's one thing I have done. I looked up in January and I said, okay, last year I spent $60,000 in ads to get to people. This year I've already spent $150,000. So I told myself I have to spend more money to make more money. Get into bigger rooms. So I'm going to Andy Elliott's inner circle. If you don't know who Andy Elliott is, he's the biggest sales trainer in the United States. They grew their following from 1 million to 2 million in 4 months on social media. And then I paid like $15,000 to go to this Limitless event with Ed Milet and Keaton
That's the
Hoskins,
one in
Donald Trump
St.
Jr.,
Louis.
Salt Lake
Nope,
City.
not St. Louis. Yeah, Salt Lake, all the
Yep.
places. Salt Lake.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I'm making sure that I'm staying active. And to me, that's what it is. Before it was like, hey, grind, because that's what every entrepreneur does is trading their time for money, and that's what I was doing. Now it's time to trade or make other people. So there's two ways to make more money. You can work more, or you can print more of yourselves. So that's what I'm trying to do is make people completely automated to where when they show up to a meeting, I don't even have to worry about who they are, what they're doing, how they're talking, because we've been through the ringer with each other. But to solidify that answer, it's get in bigger rooms and stay active. My problem is I'm very, very introverted. Very like if we were in person, I probably wouldn't want to do this. But I do have a podcast next week, and Andy Elliott's podcast that I'm pretty nervous about. But it's just doing things I've never done to get what I've never gotten.
Good. I love that. Very cool. Well, in wrapping up, I always have three final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that we really want to leave our listeners with. The first and final question is if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Find someone who has what you want and do what they're doing.
Cool. That's awesome. Second one, what's a favorite quote and why?
Be present. Another one is be where your feet are. Basically the same thing. Whenever you're in a room with your family, your spouse, and you're on your phone all the time, they hate you for it. Even if they don't say it, even if they don't notice it, they indirectly see that you're on your phone, that you're doing things you're not supposed to do. So whenever you're around family, 45 minutes, an hour of just solid eye to eye contact, talking like people nowadays don't know how to have a conversation because they didn't have to grow up having conversations. I took my daughter's phone recently and said, hey, you're going to be a human being. We're going to have conversations. You're going to make eye contact. You're going to shake hands. You're going to be way, way advanced of everybody in your class because we're going to be a human being. We're not going to be a drone, a 2023, 2024 drone.
That's cool. I love that. And third and final question, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
What was that question again?
What's one word or sentence you would like on your gravestone?
I'd say integrity. So my business is completely about integrity, open, honesty. If you come in and you want a certain product or you want something done in your life that's financially driven, and you talk to us or me, just me personally, it's just talk about me, and I believe it doesn't fit what you want to do. So let's say you want to get into real estate and you're not the type of person that can handle people. I'm going to tell you, do not do it. And if you do it anyway, I'm going to make you sign a piece of paper saying that I told you not to do it. That way, in a couple of years, when you look up and everything crashed, I told you. So everything I do is integrity based. If you follow my social media, Viking Financial Group, all I basically do is pull up. I mean, I say all I do. Half of what I do is like, this is what a Roth IRA is. Here, go take it. I'm not going to tell you to come to me to do it. Just, this is what it is. The other half is here's what Dave Ramsey says. Here's what David McKnight says. Here's what the real intelligent banker says. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. So all I'm trying to do is say, here's the actual information, which is what people want. It's what I want. So that's what I give to people.
Love that. By the way, guys, we'll have all that information in the show notes. So definitely follow Dustin. I've checked out some of his stuff and it's pretty cool. So definitely do that. And so, if you run into someone in a coffee shop, they're like, that was awesome, Dustin. We're going to go all in. We're going to do all these things that we chatted about. Was there anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
I like to drop a couple nuggets in people's minds because are taboo. No one wants to talk about it because they feel like, hey, if I have $40,000 saved and you have $100,000 saved, I'm inferior. As a man, whenever you first shake hands, hey, my name is Dustin. How are you? What do you do for a living? That's the first conversation that every man has. Oh, I'm a plumber. Oh, I'm a financial advisor. Oh, I sweep floors. Like you base your self-worth off of what you do. And it's the same thing with money. Men don't want to talk about money. No one wants to talk about money because it's an inferiority complex. So I like to give a couple nuggets just for you to go think. That's all I really care about is for you to actually sit and think about it. One, a 401k is not the only way. And I know that's kind of scammy sounding, but most people don't know that your average fee in your 401k is 2%. So if you're averaging seven, you're actually taking home five. 7% average, two to fees. Someone's getting paid big money. The rest of it, you'll be able to reap. That actually erodes like 2/3 of your wealth over your lifetime. Now, to take the match is huge. If you're getting 4% to put in 4%, you would be dumb not to take that. It's free money. And then you can actually have so much money at retirement and not have to pay taxes. Most people don't know that. There's a thing called a standard deduction where if you're a single person, you have $300,000 in your 401k. When you take income of 12, 5, 14, whatever it ends up being at the time, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So you have to take the pre-tax. It's the only way that you can put money away pre-tax and take it non-taxable. That's huge. Anything else, you need to look into just different options. I won't say what. We specialize in cash value life insurance just because it's safe, predictable. Because if you don't know anything about accounts, there's variable accounts. Variable accounts like the EKG goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. You have fixed, so like a CD. Everybody's heard of a certificate of deposit. It's a fixed 3, 4, 5% growth. It's grandpa's CD just puts money into the bank and they keep it. 5 years later, you earn 15% total. The reason why I say older people use CDs all the time was because back in the 90s, inflation was so crazy that you could get a 14% CD. You're not going to touch that today. So it's just, can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's why people use CDs and money markets. Um, we like cash value life insurance because you can get a fixed cash value life insurance policy that grows tax free. So whenever you do take that income in the future, and if you don't know, there are life insurance policies that grow value and you can actually take income from that without being taxed or penalized. That's one thing. Two, taxes. Man, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that say, I need to pay less taxes. And I say, hey, I totally get it. No one wants to pay Uncle Sam unless you're just the most patriotic person out there. But did you know in 1950, Ronald Reagan paid 91% taxes? So every year around May, he would retire. He's like, why would I work anymore when I have to pay 91% to the government? Back in the 70s, the highest tax bracket was 70%. And if you didn't know, right now, the highest tax bracket isn't even 40%. So I say that to say you are paying a lot of taxes now, but it is going to get so much worse. Taxes are looking to double by 2035. So what that means is when you put money away pre-tax now, and say you avoid 22% taxes, when you take it in 20 years, you might be paying 44% taxes. So you really have to have a strategy. That's why we like that tax-free strategy I was talking about. And then the other thing is, if you're a small business owner, most people don't realize 93% of small business owners overpay on taxes, and that average overpayment's about 12,000, and that's average. So some people overpay by a dollar, some people overpay by a million. I say all that to say we have 20 certified financial advisors, about 20 or 30 financial professionals. We have three CPAs. We actually have a full CPA firm within our company, Spectrum Planning Group, and a JDLLM tax attorney. So I just say all that to say, um, really look at your books, understand where your money's going, understand taxes. Once you know how taxes work and you understand that once I make $40,000 as a single person, now I jump into the next tax bracket. Once you understand tax brackets, pre-tax versus post-tax contributions accounts, you're really going to look at money differently.
That's good. Love that, guys. Well, if you have any questions, as always, reach out. I know Dustin will be super helpful, and his team and all of that kind of stuff. So, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. If we can go out there, if we can change one life at a time or help one starfish at a time, together, we can change the world. Thanks so much for being on, Dustin.
Thank you.